And welcome to the Daily Space Weather, folks. I'm your host, Dan, aka smAsho. We are starting things out this morning on our shortened Sunday coverage looking at sunspot 2765, which has graduated to a beta delta class. That has to do with the polarities associated with the umbra and magnetic mixing happening. We do see a coronal mass ejection also out here coming out of the western limb, right about where my pointer is. Happened just today, right there. You can see some ejecta. All right, that wasn't today. That wasn't today. Anyway, here's the full view in 171 angstroms. You can also see some active regions at the higher latitudes. All cycle 25 activity. Bunch of filamentary activity going on also. So here's the coronal mass ejection we're talking about. It's not Earth facing, but you'll see it right here. Right there it happened. It was actually yesterday that happened. And here you can see that coronal mass ejection from the C3 as well. Going out past Venus. Not really past Venus per se, but perspective past Venus. And we are streaming this live once again at twitch.tv/smAsho. Thanks to our patrons. Please consider supporting the channel. If you're not yet a patron, you'll get some perks for being a patron. So consider helping to increase the likelihood these videos will continue to be free and come out every day and include all the information that we put in them by being a patron, the real source of funding for the content. We're also on Subscribestar and PayPal, so visit the links below the video. Now, HelioViewer is seeing some data problems, so we're going to ignore HelioViewer and refer you to SolarHam. SolarHam always has analysis of active sunspot regions. Just head to the solarham.net homepage and click on the active region. And there it's telling you that it is a beta delta class sunspot. We talked a little bit about sunspot classifications yesterday, and the reason it's a beta delta class is because we've got these two fields here associated with this umbra, shown here in red, are separated by less than 2 degrees. So we've got a clear north-south line between the polarities. That makes it a beta class overall in terms of its sunspotness. And this magnetic mixing happening here at the front, and possibly this at the back here, could make it into a beta delta class. So you need the two separate polarities with separate umbrae, and then magnetic mixing changes the class of it. You can also look at the synoptic map there when the sun is not doing very much, solarham.net. Next, we're going to look at the 94 angstroms view. And we're mainly focusing on that sunspot because we've got to shorten the coverage a little bit today. We may put out another video. It's possible. No promises. And we did see some flaring come out of that also. I haven't really analyzed very much. Here's the 48-hour view of the full disk in 94 angstroms. One of the wavelengths in which 10 photos are taken per minute instead of only 2. KP index is at 2, having come off the floor in the past 6 hours. Well, back down to 1. 10.7 centimeter radial flux has gone up. No surprise there, as it's a pretty powerful sunspot. 272. So radial flux, the F107, as it's called by some, the 10.7 centimeter radial flux, a proxy for sunspot number. A measurement of solar activity that almost perfectly proportionally follows sunspot number. And we're skipping the cosmology segment today. Where will you be on the solstice? We'll be streaming live on Twitch, on Facebook, and on YouTube. So join us for the Solstice Stream 2020. And drop us a line if you like. We'll actually take in calls during the show on the smAsh VoIP line. So if you'd like to reach us in real time, you can text or call, leave a voicemail if we don't answer, at the smAsho VoIP line. It's 610-936-9799. Next, looking at the location of objects in the solar system. There's where they are now. There's where they'll be in a week. As Venus moves into the Jupiter-Saturn-Mars oppositional zone, here's what's going on above my head. And we made the video at 5:27. And if you've got a good view of the ecliptic, you might be able to see the Moon, Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars. And if you get up before sunrise, go look east on the ecliptic. You will see the third brightest object visible from Earth, known as Venus, which has been making appearances on the LASCO C2. Next, we're going to look at the real-time solar wind. I promise. Although we're not looking at it now because it hasn't loaded. And I lied. Sorry about that. We're looking at the GOES X-ray flux. So we saw a bunch of B-class flaring happening there. The potential for larger flares like C-class flares has significantly gone up now, again, as that is now a beta-delta class sunspot group. Proton flux hasn't really done anything, and there's no expectation of it to do anything significant right now. But we've put it up in preparation for this thing we called Solar Max. Now, we just saw an uptick in the solar wind speed here. And that looks a little bit like a coronal hole wind stream, folks. Let's see. Phi angle's at about 300 degrees. Solar wind density is about 14 protons per cubic centimeter. Solar wind density about 14 protons per cubic centimeter. Solar wind speed 333 kilometers a second. Coincidentally, the time we ended the live stream from earlier today. Next, looking at the geospace magnetosphere movies. First, the pressure. And we're talking magneto-hydrodynamic pressure here. And we expect to see some pressure as we've gotten a bit of an uptick in the density there, which will probably come down as the solar wind continues to ramp up higher. That's the typical MO, the modus operandi of a coronal hole wind stream. Anyway, here's 4 hours of data of what the magnetosphere is expected to be looking like right now, thanks to the space weather modeling framework. And shout out to you, Michigan. Wolverines. All right, and next, looking at geospace ground magnetic perturbations to see how much of that translates into ground-based measurements. Anyway, there's 4 hours of data there. We see some perturbations over the Canadian North Pole, fewer over the Siberian North Pole, and more evidence that the South Pole is indeed in the southern Indian Ocean, as opposed to on the Antarctic continent closer to the geographic pole. There's the GOES magnetometer information. It's looking pretty smooth there. And next we'll look at the Gong 2. Make sure we have the newest data here. This data is 1 hour and 26 minutes old. Keep in mind the magnetic environment can suddenly change, and you can see it happening on the magnetometers. These readings come from about 51 magnetometers on Earth, part of the National Sunspot Observatory, as well as Stereo A and Stereo B's magnetometers. And as forecasted, we are remaining right now in the North Pole-oriented portion of the current sheet, shown here in green, as opposed to the South Pole-oriented current sheet, shown in red. We are still waiting to see the update on the solar polar fields at solon.info, as it'll be interesting to see if the North and South poles have gained or lost strength. I'm sure I can find the data, folks. It's just that we're quite busy, and there's a lot of things going on behind the scene that you may not be aware of. Make sure we got the newest data here. There's the line of sight field plot, and you're going to see some distortions over here in the B field, and that's associated with sunspot 2765. Thanks everybody who tuned into the live stream earlier this morning. It was an interesting conversation, as typically is the case with our viewers. Next, looking at the relativistic electrons, we see very low levels, and they've come back down. And there's the GOES electron flux. And this is you can see this big ramp down from August of last year. The GOES electron flux still at pretty low levels here, and we don't expect to see this go up much at all. In fact, I'm expecting it to get lower as we've seen the solar wind speed ramping up. Next, looking at the total electron content forecast, we don't see very much expectation of GPS errors. Maybe northern South America will get about, I don't know, 15-20 meters of GPS errors around noontime, as those satellites must communicate through a lot of electrons. Next, looking at the ionosphere, just one of those layers. And let's see, it's looking pretty normal so far here. Here's 6 hours of data updated every 15 minutes. Some anomalies there over North America, nothing to write home about. Let's look at the latest image. And there's the latest coming in at 9:30 UT. Ionosphere is looking a little bit charged up on the nighttime side. I felt charged up, did you? Of course, I'm not in the ionosphere, so I don't know what relevance that is. Let's look at earthquakes. Here's a 4.4 at Afghanistan. It's at a 223-kilometer depth, followed only a few minutes, 6 minutes later, by a 5.7 at Fiji, which I believe is the largest quake of the past 24. That one came in at 10:55 UT about 22 hours ago. Next, looking at the rest of the list here, I'm just going to scroll up, citing anything odd or anything that sticks out. Please leave a comment. If I missed something, let us know. There's a deep quake in South America. It's only a 4.1 magnitude. There's a quake off the coast of Norway. That's not exactly a common place to see an earthquake. It looks like it's nowhere near the Atlantic North American plate boundary. I'm sorry, the European North American plate boundary. Also, here's a deep quake in Indonesia. Indonesia, a company I have trouble pronouncing because I talk too fast. It's a 4.2 magnitude at 150.7 kilometers. And just making it to the top of the list here, nothing over a 6 magnitude has kicked off over the past 24. Let's look at volcanoes. The volcano list for today, June 7th, includes... Is June 7th D-Day or something? I seem to remember that date. Shall it live in infamy? Mount Aso is producing a flight level of 8,000 with its volcanic ash plume. Sakurajima, flight level 8,000 there. Don't attempt to pole vault the caldera at Semeru because it's got a 13,000-foot ash plume coming out of it, or at least a flight level of 13,000 feet. Popocatépetl exploding, flight level 19,000 there. Sangay exploding, flight level 19,000 there, so a bit of an uptick in that area. Ravenador exploding, 15,000-foot ash plume there. Sabancaya exploding, continuous emissions and a plume of 24,000 feet. And while we don't see emissions from Nevados de Chilean, please do not attempt to do the Fosbury flop over the caldera. Please leave a comment if you're a high jumper, as I used to be a high jumper. And have you gotten completely sick of this and you're just like, oh, that's no danger. Okay, bye. One of the things you can do when you're locked down by a COVIDiotic government is you can listen to our original music. It's located at soundclick.com/GoldenCat Productions. And we've got a bunch of tracks that have been charted now. It's quite incredible. You can even buy the music if you want to download it to your MP3 collection for between 99 cents and $1.25 per track. Or you can stream it like this. This is the one we used to use for our intro, Unified Theory 3. And yes, it's about a unified theory of physics. Let's look at some news headlines. Protests continue in the Lehigh Valley for second straight weekend. They've been largely peaceful, but there has been some disheartening stuff that I'm not going to go into detail about, but guess what? People have been staging weapons, including firearms, in places like outside Lehigh County Courthouse. So, yeah, there are some problems. So this is the local news. Very local news, Channel 69. Here's USA Today, and protests. How that's going to solve racism, I have no idea. But, okay, you have the right to protest. Apparently you didn't have the right to have elective cancer treatments or go to the hair salon, or go to a restaurant, or go to a bar, or do any normal stuff. But apparently it's fine to gather in giant numbers, even though the spooky COVID could just suddenly murder everybody. Even though a study's recently come out, listed on SciTech Daily, citing the fact that 80% of Brits turned out to not even be susceptible to SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19 or whatever you'd like to call it this week. And why people are protesting in different countries over police brutality makes no sense. By the way, police hate police brutality. Everybody hates police brutality. Cops screw up all the time, and it's not in any... I'm just going to move on. The point is, don't be a... savage. Be kind to each other, and don't be undomesticated or out of control. Don't be an uncivilized human. Don't be a... savage. It's a problem. Now, savage, I like to read the dictionary. I should do an entire series called reading the dictionary with smAsho, because you should be an
advocate
of our content, and you should share it on your social media. Also, check it out. We got 3,000 views in like one day on smashomash.com/forum. Quite amazing, as we're over 1,200 users now. If you want to contribute, you've got to create a login. However, if you just want to lurk, you are able to view the stuff all for free. We don't have a paywall yet on the site, but we will, because we have to get paid to do this, because we're tanking over here and we need people to help support the channel. So if you see the format suddenly change, don't be surprised as to why that happened. Patreon.com/smAshomash is a good place. Check out the hurricane warning. By the way, the hurricane's going to weaken. I'll show you why in a minute. We've got some... What is that? That is a hard freeze watch. Hard freeze watch in most of Nevada. Winter weather advisories in the northern Rockies. Apparently the planet is so hot that it's cold, folks. And by the way, CO2 levels don't seem to be proportional to human activity. What do you think of that? How do you like them apples? Doesn't that seem like, I don't know, what some of us have been telling you for years via our YouTube videos? Yeah, cheers. We've been telling you for years. And yeah, I've got 1,600 subs. What a joke. I'm sure it has nothing to do with censorship or shadow bans. Next, looking at the jet streams, we see extreme meridional jet stream flow here in the Western world. In the Eastern world, we see similar extreme meridional jet stream flow. Look at this equatorial air being blown all the way to Antarctica. Look at the jet stream going the wrong way here. It's going partially west. Here you've got some western flowing jet stream portions. It's on nullschool.net. Let's look at the pressure cells. As high pressure creeps toward my area and then creeps back into Canada. Shout out to Neil Thompson. I have nothing bad to say. Anyway, there's where things are expected to be around noon tomorrow. In terms of pressure, it's from windy.com. They've got a great mobile app. Check it out. Next, looking at water vapor maps for Europe and Africa. Water vapor maps for Oceania and the Far East. Places like Tokyo and Osaka and Sapporo. By the way, Sapporo makes a weird beer in a can. It's pretty tasty. My favorite beer from the Far East is a rice beer whose name I can't remember. It's the driest beer in the world. It has zero aftertaste. It's the crispest, freshest tasting beer. It's made from rice, and its name escapes me at this moment. Let's look at volcanoes, not volcanoes, lightning. There's quite a bit of lightning striking, actually. Let's see where it's at. Hey, Duluth, you could be in the crosshairs. Hey, White Earth Indian Reservation, there's thunder rolling in. Chippewa National Forest, are you camping right now in Chippewa National Forest watching our daily space weather video? Are you in Grand Rapids, perhaps? There's thunder rolling in. Pretend you're Thor the next time you hear thunder at lightningmaps.org by forecasting thunder. Freak out your foes, impress your friends. And we see snow falling all around the western portion of the U.S. The planet must be so hot that it's snowing and going into the second week of June. It's so hot that it's cold, folks. That's why we see three winters in a row with 2 standard deviations above normal snowfall. It must be hot. It's really, really hot. It's so hot that there's record snow falling everywhere constantly in the whole northern hemisphere. Anyway, there you've got what's going on in the Gulf of Mexico and so on. A big string of thunderstorms here making their way out of Minnesota, headed to the northeast. Here's what's going on in the Gulf. That's the cloud layer down there. We're looking at, it's too dark to see the visible right now, a good animation of it, so we use the NASA GOES interactive weather satellite. The shortwave infrared, band 7, 3.9 nanometers. Next, looking at the water vapor map to see what's really going on. And the reason this thing is not going to get particularly strong is because of all this dry air that's surrounding it. It's going to prevent it from getting very, very hot, and it's not going to allow it to strengthen. It's going to constrict where it's located, so you're going to see some concentrated damage probably on the Gulf Coast. But I don't expect to see a major hurricane form out of this because of all this dry, massive air, which is not only constraining its motion, but it's also weakening it. You can see a bunch of dry air blobs moving around there. Let's take a look at the close-up of that area for today's weather pornographers. And by the way, we're looking to get some meteorologists occasionally to come on the show. So if you're a meteorologist and you watch the content, give us a ring, drop us a line, send us an email. It's smashomash@gmail.com. We'd be more than happy to have a meteorologist or two. Whether it's Tony Heller or perhaps even David Schlotauer, who knows. And so there you go. There's what's going on there in the Gulf, and all of that dry air around there is a good sign in terms of doing less damage to the Gulf Coast. Thanks, Smash Team, for tuning in. Remember, we got bonus features, so don't go anywhere, because we ain't done yet. And there's the current most refreshed image of Sunspot 2765 in intensity gram, and you can see the ombre associated. There are also penumbra on at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I see at least 6 obvious umbra with penumbra. That's probably a lot more than that in terms of the actual official number. We won't get into how those are counted because it's crazy, and I don't want to explain it because this is the daily space weather and we don't want the video to be too long. There's the current magnetic environment, and it doesn't look to have strengthened particularly in the last hour or so while I did show prep and the show. Next, finally, we're going to look at the local yellow dwarf and 304 angstroms. And now I'm going to vanish. Now I'm going to check the chat, so bear with me. This is a 48-hour SDO movie. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, stare at the sun, don't drink, and if you do, don't drive. Get outside and do something fun, perhaps. Go out and get some sun. If you're locked in a bunker, take some vitamin D supplements. Don't be a savage. We'll be coming out with more content soon, possibly this afternoon. So look for that. Thanks again for tuning in, everybody. Remember, stare at the sun, don't drink, and if you do, don't drive. And since it'll never be now again, welcome to the Neo Renaissance.